Good afternoon, everyone. And thank you, Profan, for inviting me to the webinar. I'll talk about how satellite can help people and families connect to each other, which has become even more important during COVID. So it might be a bit more oriented towards now and over the next couple of years compared to Tom's presentation, but there's certainly some similarities here. Connectivity is not just a nice to have anymore. It is really essential. And 3G and 4G networks are playing a much bigger role for everyone's connectivity. And what we learned through the COVID-19 crisis is that millions of people in Europe are working from home. I think we all, have this experience. We're actually not in Istanbul today, so we're all sitting at home and doing this, and we all need bandwidth to do it. And a lot of people, 40% of those people working from home, were not doing that before the pandemic came. It's a big change, and 3G and 4G networks could really complement and support this requirement that is coming up of bandwidth that sometimes the terrestrial broadband can't supply. Also, students in Europe staying at home, universities shut down and they're studying from home. And actually that means that millions of students don't even have access to the education for months. And this is, first graders throughout the university. And for these people also, they also going home and doing it, they also need sometimes complementing the access to internet to manage their studies. And again, 3G, 4G are then complementing the terrestrial networks that people are used to using, and they get a bit stretched when all these new people are coming on board. Also, new health centers and hospitals are coming up, and everything from vaccine centers or test centers, they also need to be connected. Everything needs to be measured, need to be controlled, need to be communicated. And also here, 3G or 4G networks have been used to connect these new sites, and they play a really important role. Now, so many needs more coverage and bandwidth, but really one question is, what is driving this coverage from the MNO side? There's actually a few drivers that is important to understand what creates that coverage. So I think that one of the main drivers from the MNOs or for the MNOs is actually the regulatory requirements. And we see stronger in some countries and less so in some other, but if I use the examples of Europe, in some of these European countries, you have a very strong regulator who is regulating the MNOs licenses, and they are forcing the MNOs to increase the coverage, the broadband connectivity for the MNOs. And in particular in the UK, you have shared rural network as an example, you might have read about in the papers. France will have the New Deal, and Germany, they got coverage obligations. And this means that if you don't live up to the obligations of the regulatory parties telling you to do, you will either lose your license or you will be having a fine, which normally means an increased license fee. And that is really something that speaks to the MNOs directly. If you don't do it, it will really hurt them. Also, it's consumers. Obviously, everyone wants to have the connectivity where they live, work, and play. And so the consumers are dictating a bit, of course, where that coverage needs to be by telling the operators where they need to be. And the competition is obviously one of the drives as well. People will pick, they will vote with their feet and with the SIM cards. And, if an operator, if another one has a better coverage, people switch. Transportability on the SIM cards goes very quickly. And if you look at the current situation, there are lots of people living and working from home in these rural areas. And Tom, you were showing that lots of people, obviously lots of the earth is not populated. But if you just look at the basics that we think that, we're all where we are, it's still a large share is, in rural areas. And even though we talk about 5G and those things, let's not forget that there's a lot of people who doesn't have proper 4G or 3G access. And even if they sometimes have what's called 3G and 4G access, it's not good. And it's certainly not good nowadays when suddenly the whole family, mum and dad, children, everyone's working from home, and they have completely different requirements than they had just a couple of months ago. So the situation is changing slightly, But also remember that there's lots of remote areas that is not connected that we think are connected. And today, as I'm sure you're aware, that you got three primary means of providing backhaul to cells for mobile coverage. So you got fiber, really good for urban, suburban areas, and you got microwave, and then you also have the satellite. However, there's a few challenges involved here. So running fiber and microwave over long distances is expensive, and it's quite costly to install. When you try to reach multiple sites, and depending on if it's rocky terrain or whatever, that also increases the cost. Same thing with microwave. One hop's fine, but as you increase the hops, and Tom, you were mentioning the electricity cost and site cost for each and every hop, it just multiplies. And so you need to sort of get a return of investment on this. So that sometimes is quite difficult when in remote areas, it's not much in population, but you still need to connect them. And also, finally, it's a time issue. The whole part about coverage is evolving the whole time. You need to be responsive. You need to roll out the sites. Once you decided where the coverage should be, where the site should be, it takes a long time to, in particular, connect fiber or with fiber and microwave. Satellite covers 99% of the Earth, and you can connect it almost instantly. So there's a few advantages of connecting with satellite, but there's not one single solution for every different site. It depends on where they are. And then let's have a look at why today's satellite backhaul is sometimes the ideal solution for, in particular, rural coverage, and also providing some backup. So something that is more now than maybe in the past, satellite is more cost efficient. So with new technologies, you have what we call dynamically distributed bandwidth. So that means that you share sort of a bucket or a bandwidth that the sites share. And by sharing it, it's much more efficient. And if it's more efficient, you reduce the cost rather than having a point-to-point type of connection where the capacity is sometimes completely empty and sometimes being busy then. So the efficiency brings down the cost. Coverage, worldwide coverage, I just mentioned that. You can just really connect any remote site that you want very quickly. And the continuity, everyone wants to have a reliable network. So I think we see more and more that even if you connect a site with fiber or microwave, the redundancy isn't there. So you can always back up for the case of something breaks down, and you use the redundancy via satellite. And also the faster deployment and those things that I mentioned earlier, that adds on to why you can then use satellite then. Also, it was mentioned about high throughput satellites, and to create the right coverage and also the right bandwidth, we're using from Intelsat, and we got what we call EPIC high throughput satellites. And so these provide beams that are much more focused, and by using much more focused and smaller beams, we call them the spot beams, you can then allow a higher power to the antennas and to the sites. And when you have higher power, that simply equals higher data rates. So the new technology is then spot beams with KU. So we're still using GEO, but using it more efficiently, and thereby increasing the bandwidth and also the costing. And so if you look at from the endpoint of perspective, what this means is that you have smaller terminals. So in case for mobile and CellBackhaul, you can bring it down to 1.2 meter antennas. That's really easy to deploy, put in anywhere. And that 1.2 meter antenna with spot beams can create, or you're allowed to run much faster speeds through those. And that means that that enables applications like 4G. So through the new way of using satellite technology and also high throughput satellite, is much more targeted towards supporting 4G applications. And something that is coming now, instead of everyone building their own networks and buying megahertz, which was maybe in the past, it's getting to be more and more focused on providing managed services. The mobile network operators who are in need of reaching out and connecting more and more of the sites, They're not really keen on building out the technology and know-how. No operator is keen on CapEx. They're keen on OpEx, but not CapEx. So that's why we're building up a fully managed service to enable operators to quickly bring something up in a more cost-efficient way. You can cover more land area by very quickly connecting them. You address these issues that I just mentioned, the regulatory pressures to follow what they say, that where you need to cover the white spots, as they're called. You can also replace old bandwidth legacy like copper, because that's not always very efficient and it's still used in remote areas. And you can also obviously using it for being very flexible. The time to set up a site is instant. Once you have the managed service up, you just need to order it and you have it up on the same day or the day after. And finally, then again, the worry and hassle of actually building out new technology is not what they're keen on. So they could then continue focusing on what they're good at, which is giving a good service on their mobile network. And as the point, I thought Barry was saying on the what did you call it? The bullet, not the bullet point, but the last point then is really to say, so for rural communities, when we talk about that the governments and the people, the users, people working from home, to bring that rural connectivity, for quite a few of them, the only way to do it is satellite technology. When you talk about timely or costly in a way that is actually suitable. It really is not really suitable to bring it to very remote areas of fiber or microwave. So as Barry said, we're still there, GEO is still alive and providing a service, and we'll do that over the next couple of years as well. And it is really very current topic, in particular in these COVID times. And when people now have changed working from home, this is not going back next year. Even if COVID disappears, the way we work, the way we communicate, what we get used to will stay. So we need to continue to bring out connectivity to remote areas. Okay, I think that was it. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Svante.